The large circular classroom at the Galactic Medical Academy buzzed with excitement. Today was assignment day, when senior students received their final research projects. 4 students sat nervously at the front. Zixvora with her blue skin and 4 eyes, Krell whose rock-like skin changed colors with his mood, Nebulon who floated slightly above his chair due to his low-gravity physiology, and Talia whose translucent body pulsed with bioluminescent light. Professor Xanthi entered the room, her tentacles carrying various data tablets. The aged xenobiologist was respected throughout the galaxy for her work on comparative species biology. Today you begin your final challenge, she announced. Your team has been assigned to study a newly discovered intelligent species from a small blue planet in the Milky Way. They call themselves humans. Nebulon raised a limb. Are they an advanced species, Professor? Technologically, they are in early development. They have achieved spaceflight, but only within their own solar system. What makes them interesting is their biology, Professor Xanthi replied. The classroom screen displayed human anatomy. The students looked confused. This cannot be right, Krell said, his skin turning a doubtful yellow. Where is their armor? Their backup organs? Their regenerative tissues? Humans have none of these things, Professor Xanthi explained. They have no natural defenses. Their skin tears easily. Their bones break under modest pressure. They have single instances of vital organs, yet somehow they survive. The students exchanged glances. This assignment seemed like a joke. The Academy has received permission to observe humans in their natural habitat, the professor continued. You will travel to Earth with me and document how this seemingly fragile species has managed to become the dominant life form on their planet. 1 week later, their research vessel entered Earth's orbit. They were met by Dr. Elaine Wright, a human physician appointed as their guide. Dr. Wright welcomed them at a private landing facility. She was shorter than the aliens expected, with curly brown hair and dark skin. She showed no fear meeting beings from another world. Welcome to Earth, she said with a smile. I understand you're here to study us. I'm happy to help, though I should warn you, we're not very exciting from a biological standpoint. Zixvora scanned Dr. Wright with her medical device. Your body temperature is extraordinarily high, she noted with concern. Are you suffering from an infection? Dr. Wright laughed. No, that's normal for us. Humans run hot. The aliens followed Dr. Wright to a building complex that would serve as their research center. On the way, they passed a large open area where humans were running in circles, lifting heavy objects, and deliberately exhausting themselves. What is this strange punishment ritual? Talia asked, her body flashing with confusion. That's just a gym, Dr. Wright explained. People exercise to stay healthy. You deliberately damage your muscle tissue, Professor Xanthi asked, her tentacles curling in surprise. Yes. When our muscles repair, they grow stronger. The aliens recorded this strange behavior in their notes. Later that day, they established their observation lab. As they unpacked equipment, a loud crash came from outside. They rushed to see a human male had fallen from a ladder while fixing a light. He was bleeding from his arm. He needs immediate medical attention, Krell exclaimed. But to their shock, the human stood up, wrapped a cloth around his bleeding arm, and continued working. Should we intervene? Nebulon asked Dr. Wright. He's fine, she assured them. Just a minor cut. But he's leaking vital fluids, Zixvora protested. Humans can lose a significant amount of blood without serious consequences, Dr. Wright explained. Our bodies constantly make more. That evening, the alien students reviewed their first day of observations. These humans deliberately stress their bodies to strengthen them, Talia noted. And they continue functioning despite injuries that would incapacitate most species, added Zixvora. Professor Xanthi nodded thoughtfully. Tomorrow we begin formal studies. I believe we have much to learn about how a species with so many biological disadvantages has survived. There must be something extraordinary about humans that we cannot yet see. The students couldn't know that their research was about to challenge everything they understood about biology, resilience, and the nature of life itself. The next morning, Dr. Wright took the alien medical students to Lincoln Memorial Hospital. The building was large and white, filled with humans moving quickly through long hallways. "Today you'll meet Joe Gardner," Dr. Wright explained. "His case might interest you." They entered a small room where a man with a beard lay in bed. His leg was suspended in a device, and his arm was wrapped in a hard white material. Despite this, he smiled when they entered. "Are these the alien doctors you told me about?" Joe asked, looking at the strange group with curiosity rather than fear. "Medical students," Six-Vora corrected. "We are here to study human biology." Joe laughed. "Well, I'm not the best example of a healthy human right now." Dr. Wright showed them Joe's medical file on a tablet. "Mr. Gardner fell from a construction site 3 weeks ago. He dropped nearly 30 feet and suffered multiple fractures in his right leg and left arm, 3 broken ribs, and a punctured lung." The aliens looked at Joe with new interest. "How are you still alive?" Nebulon asked bluntly. Joe shrugged, then winced at the movement. "Just lucky, I guess. The doctors patched me up." Krell's skin turned a deep purple of confusion. "In our species, such injuries would be fatal or at minimum require organ replacement." "May I?" Six-Vora asked, holding up her scanning device. Joe nodded, and she moved it slowly over his body. The screen displayed images of bones with visible breaks that were starting to mend. "Fascinating," she said. "Your body is actively rebuilding the bone tissue." "Humans heal slowly compared to many species," Professor Xanthi explained to her students, "but they compensate with remarkable pain tolerance and psychological resilience." "It hurts plenty," Joe admitted. "But what choice do I have? My wife Lissa needs me, and our son has college next year. I'll be back at work in 2 months." "Back at work?" Talia's body flashed with surprise. "After such trauma?" "Sure, this isn't even my worst accident. My grandfather had it worse. He was a sailor who survived a shipwreck, floated at sea for 47 days before rescue." The aliens recorded this information with growing amazement. "And my mom beat cancer. Twice," Joe continued. "Doctors said she wouldn't make it the second time, but she's still gardening every day at 73. Dr. Wright nodded. "Cancer is when our cells grow out of control. Treatment is often extremely harsh on the body. Yet humans endure it," Professor Xanthi noted. A nurse entered the room. "Time for physical therapy, Mr. Gardner." The aliens watched as Joe was helped from his bed. His face showed pain, but he kept moving. With assistance, he stood on his good leg. "It hurts more to stay still," Joe explained, seeing their concerned looks. "Gotta keep moving, or the muscles get weak." "This concept of pushing through pain is alien to us," Nebulon said. "Our species evolved to avoid damage entirely." They observed as the physical therapist had Joe perform exercises that clearly caused discomfort. "Remarkable," Professor Xanthi whispered. "They deliberately stress injured areas to promote healing." After therapy, Joe was sweating and breathing heavily, but looked satisfied. "Tomorrow, I'll try to walk a few steps without the crutch," he told them. Later, as they left the hospital, the students discussed what they had witnessed. "Humans don't just survive injuries," Six-Vora observed. "They actively fight against their limitations. Their healing is slow but effective," Krell added, his skin now a thoughtful blue. "I've arranged for you to observe the emergency room tomorrow," Dr. Wright told them. "There you'll see humans at their most resilient." As they returned to their research center, Professor Xanthi seemed deep in thought. "What is troubling you, Professor?" Talia asked. "I'm beginning to believe we've misunderstood humans fundamentally," she replied. "We assess them as weak because they lack physical defenses, but perhaps their true strength lies elsewhere." The students couldn't know that the next day would challenge their understanding even further as they witnessed humans facing crisis situations that would break most species. Something about these seemingly fragile beings allowed them to endure what should be unendurable, and the mystery was only beginning to unfold. The emergency room of Lincoln Memorial Hospital was a place of controlled chaos. Doctors and nurses moved quickly between patients, machines beeped, and worried family members waited anxiously in plastic chairs. The 4 alien students stayed close to Dr. Wright as they entered, their strange appearances drawing curious glances from the humans. "This is Nurse Samantha Perez." Dr. Wright introduced them to a woman in blue scrubs. "She's been working here for 15 years. Samantha nodded at the aliens. "Welcome to the ER. Sorry for the mess. We had a bus accident this morning. 16 injured, 3 critical." "How long have you been working today?" Professor Xanthi asked, noticing the dark circles under Samantha's eyes. "About 30 hours now," Samantha replied, checking something on a tablet. "We're short-staffed, so I'm pulling a triple shift." Nebulon's eyes widened. 30 hours without rest. How are you still functioning?" Samantha shrugged. "Lots of coffee, and someone has to take care of these people." Before the aliens could ask more questions, the doors burst open. Paramedics rushed in with a man on a stretcher. His clothes were soaked in blood, and a temporary bandage covered his chest. Greg Daniels, 42-year-old male, car accident victim, one paramedic reported. Metal pipe from a truck went through his shoulder. Blood pressure dropping, pulse rapid but steady. The aliens watched as Samantha and the doctors immediately went to work. They cut away Greg's clothes, connected him to machines, and prepared for emergency surgery. "He should be unconscious from pain and blood loss," Zixfora whispered, scanning the man with her device. "Yet he remains aware." Indeed, Greg was still conscious. His face was pale and tight with pain, but his eyes were open. "Am I gonna make it, Doc?" he asked the physician working on him. "We'll take good care of you, Mr. Daniels," the doctor replied. "You're an Army vet, right? Use that training now. Stay with us." Greg nodded and took deep, controlled breaths despite his severe injury. "Fascinating," Professor Xanthi murmured. "He's regulating his own response to trauma." Dr. Wright led them to a quieter corner. Humans have several emergency systems in the body. Adrenaline, endorphins, chemicals that help us function despite injury. But how does he remain conscious with that level of tissue damage? Krell asked, his skin darkening to a concerned gray. "Humans can sometimes choose to stay conscious," Dr. Wright explained, "especially those with training like military personnel or first responders. They learn to control their body's panic response." They spent the next 4 hours observing the emergency room. They saw children who stopped crying when given small toys, elderly patients who apologized for being a bother despite serious conditions, and a pregnant woman who walked herself in despite being in labor. As the day went on, Zixfora paid special attention to the medical staff. "They seem as resilient as the patients," she noted. "Nurse Perez has not taken a break in hours." "Humans can tap into energy reserves when needed," Dr. Wright said. "We evolved as endurance predators. Our ancestors would chase animals until they collapsed from exhaustion, even though the animals were faster." This information sparked something in Zixfora's mind. She pulled out her data tablet and began making notes rapidly. "What are you thinking?" Talia asked, her body pulsing with curious light patterns. "I'm developing a theory," Zixfora replied. "Most species evolved defense mechanisms to avoid damage. Hard shells, powerful muscles, redundant organs, rapid healing. But humans evolved differently." "In what way?" Professor Xanthi asked, intrigued. "I believe humans evolved systems optimized for survival rather than avoidance of damage," Zixfora explained. "Their bodies expect to be injured and have developed remarkable ways to continue functioning despite it." As they left the hospital that evening, they saw Samantha Perez finally ending her shift. Despite her exhaustion, she stopped to help an elderly man find his way to the parking lot. Tomorrow, I want to show you something different, Dr. Wright told the aliens. It's called a marathon. There, you'll see humans pushing their limits voluntarily. The students couldn't imagine why any species would deliberately push themselves to exhaustion, but they were beginning to understand that humans were unlike any species they had ever studied before. Early Sunday morning, Dr. Wright took the alien medical students to a large park where hundreds of humans gathered. They wore numbered tags on their shirts and stretched their legs. Some drank water while others adjusted devices on their wrists. "What is happening here?" asked Nebulon, floating slightly above the ground to get a better view. "This is a marathon," Dr. Wright explained. "These people will run 26.2 miles without stopping." "For what purpose?" Talia's body flashed with confusion. "Are they being chased?" "No, they do it voluntarily. For the challenge, for personal achievement, or to raise money for causes they care about." Professor Xanthi looked troubled. "Do they not understand the damage this will cause to their bodies?" "They do," Dr. Wright said. "Most will be in pain for days afterward. Some may lose toenails, develop blisters, or suffer from dehydration. Yet they choose to do this." Krell's skin turned a deep orange of disbelief. A loud horn sounded, and the runners began moving as a crowd. The aliens watched with growing amazement as hundreds of humans willingly began the long journey that would push their bodies to extremes. Dr. Wright led them to different points along the route. After 2 hours, they saw the first signs of strain on the runners' faces. Many were covered in sweat, breathing hard, and showing clear signs of pain. "Look at that human." Zixvora pointed to an older woman who was limping slightly but continued to run. "She appears injured." "That's Beth Collins," Dr. Wright said after checking the runner's number in a program. "She's 67 years old and had a hip replacement last year. She replaced a joint and still subjects herself to this." Professor Xanthi was shocked. In most species, such joint replacements would be treated with extreme care. They continued to watch as the hours passed. Some runners slowed to a walk, while others stopped at stations for water and small amounts of food. A few sat by the side of the route, being treated by medical staff. "Those who cannot continue should withdraw," Krell observed. Yet many of them rise and continue despite clear distress. Around the 4-hour mark, they witnessed a male runner collapse. Medical staff rushed to him, gave him water, and checked his vital signs. To the aliens' surprise, after 10 minutes of rest, the man stood up and continued the race. His body was clearly telling him to stop, Nebulon said. "How does he override such signals?" "Humans find satisfaction in overcoming physical limitations," Dr. Wright explained. "We call it pushing through the wall. The point where your body wants to quit, but your mind decides to continue." They watched as Beth Collins crossed the finish line, raising her arms in triumph despite her obvious exhaustion. Her family rushed to meet her, placing a medal around her neck. "She appears happy despite the physical distress," Talia noted, her body glowing with soft pulses of wonder. "She is," confirmed Dr. Wright. "She just achieved something difficult, something her body told her was impossible." As they walked back to their vehicle, Nebulon was unusually quiet. "You seem troubled," Professor Xanthi said to him. "I am beginning to understand something about humans," Nebulon replied. "Their resilience isn't just physical. There's a psychological component we've been missing." "Explain," Zixvora encouraged. "In all the species we've studied, the mind and body work together. When the body signals danger or damage, the mind responds by seeking safety or rest," Nebulon said. "But humans can choose to override these signals. Their minds can decide to continue despite their body's protests." Professor Xanthi nodded thoughtfully. "A remarkable adaptation indeed." That evening, as the alien students reviewed their data, Krell made an unexpected announcement. "I believe I've identified unusual proteins in human cell samples," he said, pointing to his screen. "They appear to respond to stress in ways I've never seen before." "What kind of stress?" Professor Xanthi asked, moving closer. "All kinds," Krell replied. Physical, thermal, chemical. These proteins may be key to understanding how humans endure what should be unbearable. The team looked at each other with excitement. They were on the verge of a breakthrough that would change galactic medicine forever. The next morning, the alien medical students gathered excitedly in their lab. Krell had been working through the night, analyzing the unusual proteins he had discovered in human cells. Look at this, he said, his skin glowing a bright blue of excitement. When human cells face stress, heat, cold, pressure, or chemical damage, these proteins activate and protect the cell structure. HFY studied the data on the screen. All species have stress response mechanisms, but these are different. Because they don't just protect, Krell explained, they adapt. The more stress the cell experiences, the stronger these proteins become. It's as if human cells expect to be damaged and prepare for next time. Professor Xanthi moved closer to examine the findings. This could explain much about human resilience. Dr. Wright arrived as they were discussing the discovery. I have something else to show you today, she said. Something that might help explain what you're seeing. She led them to a small room where a man sat waiting. He was older, with gray hair and weathered skin. This is Alan Parker, Dr. Wright introduced. Alan, these are the alien medical researchers I told you about. Alan nodded politely. Nice to meet you all. Dr. Wright says you're interested in how humans handle tough situations. Mr. Parker survived being trapped under building rubble for 72 hours after an earthquake, Dr. Wright explained. The aliens looked at Alan with new interest. May I ask how you survived? Professor Xanthi inquired. Well, I was pinned down with a concrete beam across my legs, Alan said calmly, as if describing an ordinary day. I couldn't move much, and it was dark and dusty. I knew rescue might take days. Were you not in pain? Talia asked, her body pulsing with soft patterns of concern. Terrible pain. Alan nodded. But I knew panic would make things worse, so I slowed my breathing. I counted seconds to mark time. I focused my mind away from the pain. HFY scanned him with her device. You entered a meditative state. I guess that's what you'd call it, Alan replied. I've practiced meditation for years. I slowed my heartbeat and breathing. I conserved water by not crying out. I even slept for short periods. Nebulon was fascinated. You deliberately entered a state similar to microhibernation. I don't know about that. Alan smiled. I just did what I needed to survive. After speaking with Alan for another hour, the aliens returned to their lab with even more questions. I've been studying human medical records, HFY said, displaying data on a large screen. Humans can metabolize substances that would be toxic to most other life forms. They can adapt to extreme environments. They can survive massive blood loss. And there are countless historical accounts of extraordinary survival. Talia added, humans trapped in mines for weeks, explorers surviving in Arctic conditions, prisoners of war enduring years of starvation and abuse. Professor Xanthi looked thoughtful. We need to compile all this research. This may be more significant than we initially believed. Later that day, they gathered to share their findings. Nebulon presented his analysis of the psychological factors, while Krell explained more about the cellular adaptations he had discovered. There's something else, HFY said. I've been studying human brain activity during trauma. When severe injury occurs, the human brain can enter a state that preserves core functions while shutting down non-essential processes. Like the microhibernation we observed in Alan Parker, Professor Xanthi asked. Yes, but it happens automatically in extreme cases, HFY explained. The brain prioritizes survival over comfort. It can even alter perception of time during emergencies, making seconds feel like minutes to allow for more careful decision-making. So the human mind and body work together in ways we've never seen in other species, Krell summarized, his skin now a deep purple of wonder. As they continued discussing, Dr. Wright received an urgent message on her communication device. I just heard from the Galactic Medical Council, she said, looking concerned. They've learned about our research. They're skeptical of our findings and want a formal presentation. Skeptical? Why? Talia asked, her light patterns dimming with worry. Because what you're discovering challenges fundamental assumptions about biology throughout the galaxy, Dr. Wright explained. If humans can do these things, it changes everything we understand about life's limitations. Professor Xanthi stood tall, her tentacles straightening with determination. Then we will present our evidence. The council must understand what we have discovered about humans. The students looked at each other nervously. They had not expected their research project to attract such high-level attention. Now they would need to defend their work before the greatest scientific minds in the galaxy. News of the upcoming meeting with the Galactic Medical Council spread quickly. 2 senior xenobiologists arrived at the research center the next day to review the students' work. Dr. Morvax, a tall insectoid with compound eyes, and Dr. Lirith, a gelatinous being who communicated through color changes, did not hide their skepticism. You claim humans have special resilience, Dr. Morvax clicked. Yet they lack the basic defensive traits seen in all successful species. Their biology seems primitive and fragile, Dr. Lirith added, rippling blue with doubt. Professor Xanthi remained calm. We invite you to examine our evidence before making judgments. The students presented their findings one by one. Krell explained the unique stress proteins he had discovered. Zixvora showed brain scans of humans in various states of trauma response. Talia demonstrated recordings of humans recovering from injuries that would be fatal to most species. Nebulon presented his analysis of the psychological factors that allowed humans to override physical limitations. Dr. Morvax examined Krell's protein samples under a molecular scanner. Interesting, but hardly revolutionary, he said dismissively. Many species have stress response mechanisms. But not like these, Krell insisted, his skin darkening with determination. These proteins don't just respond to stress. They become more effective with repeated exposure. Human cells actually grow stronger after damage. Dr. Lirith shifted to a doubtful yellow. Your sample size is too small. 4 humans is hardly representative of an entire species. We've analyzed thousands of medical records, Zixvora countered. This isn't about a few exceptional individuals. These traits are common throughout the human population. The debate continued for hours. The visiting scientists raised objection after objection, and the students worked hard to defend their research. Finally, Dr. Morvax set down a data tablet with a sharp click. Your work is interesting but not convincing. The council requires more substantial evidence. What would convince you? Professor Xanthi asked. Dr. Lirith rippled thoughtfully. A direct comparative demonstration. If humans truly possess extraordinary resilience, they should outperform elite specimens of other species in endurance tasks. The students looked at each other nervously. This would be a difficult challenge to meet. Dr. Wright, who had been quietly observing, stepped forward. I volunteer to undergo your tests. You? Dr. Morvax's antennae twitched with surprise. You're not even an elite specimen by human standards. That's exactly the point, Dr. Wright replied firmly. I'm an average human. If I can demonstrate these traits, it proves they're common to our species. Professor Xanthi looked concerned. The tests could be dangerous, Dr. Wright. I understand, she nodded. But I believe in this research. I've seen how it could benefit medicine throughout the galaxy. After the visiting scientists left to report to the council, the aliens gathered in their lab to discuss the challenge. We need more human volunteers, Zixvora said. Different ages and physical conditions to show the range of human resilience. And we need to prepare for the specific tests the council might require, Nebulon added. Professor Xanthi looked troubled. This has become more than a research project. The council rarely takes interest in student work. Why are they so resistant to our findings? Talia asked, her body dimming with worry. Because it challenges fundamental beliefs, Dr. Wright explained. If a species is physically vulnerable as humans can endure what we do, it means biological limitations aren't as fixed as they thought. It means many medical treatments throughout the galaxy might be unnecessarily cautious. That evening, as the students continued working, Dr. Wright made calls to friends and colleagues. The next morning, she arrived with 2 more volunteers. This is Nicole Martinez, a firefighter who has entered burning buildings to save others. She introduced a woman with short, dark hair and strong arms. And this is Kevin Wells, a deep-sea diver who routinely withstands extreme pressure changes. Nicole smiled at the aliens. Dr. Wright says you need to show how tough humans can be. I'm happy to help. Kevin nodded. Just tell us what tests you need us to take. Professor Xanthi looked at the 3 humans with new respect. The council will arrive in 3 days. We must prepare carefully. The challenge was set. Now they needed to prove beyond doubt that humans possessed extraordinary abilities to endure what should be unendurable. The day of the demonstration arrived. The Galactic Medical Council had set up testing facilities in a large warehouse near the research center. Various equipment filled the space: climate chambers, physical stress stations, and monitoring devices. 6 council members sat at a long table, their diverse alien forms representing different biological approaches to survival. Dr. Wright, Nicole, and Kevin stood ready, wearing simple gray testing suits. The alien students watched nervously as Dr. Morvax explained the tests. We will measure endurance, pain tolerance, and recovery across multiple challenges, he stated. For comparison, we have brought elite specimens from 3 other species. 3 aliens stepped forward. One had thick armor-like skin, another had multiple limbs and enhanced strength, and the third had remarkable healing abilities. The first test is temperature endurance, Dr. Lirith announced, rippling with formal purple patterns. Subjects will experience extreme cold followed by extreme heat. The volunteers entered separate climate chambers. Through transparent walls, the students watched as temperatures dropped rapidly. The comparison aliens showed immediate signs of distress. The armored one curled into a protective ball. The multi-limbed one began violent shivering. The humans, however, remained standing even as frost formed on the chamber walls. They shivered and their lips turned blue, but they stayed alert and functional. Humans maintain core temperature through involuntary muscle contractions, Zixvora explained to the council. They can function mentally even as their extremities begin to freeze. When the chambers heated up, the humans began to sweat profusely. Nicole, used to heat from firefighting, showed particular resilience. While the comparison aliens quickly requested to exit their chambers, the humans endured the full testing period. The next challenge tested pain tolerance. Small devices were attached to each subject's arm, creating increasing pressure. Report when the pain becomes intolerable, Dr. Morvax instructed. The comparison aliens signaled distress at various points. The humans, however, endured much longer. Kevin, who regularly dealt with pressure changes as a diver, showed extraordinary tolerance. How are you managing this? A council member asked Dr. Wright, who was visibly in pain but still hadn't signaled to stop. I'm using breathing techniques, she explained through gritted teeth. I focus my mind elsewhere and acknowledge the pain without giving into it. The council members exchanged glances. This mental component was unexpected. The third test measured recovery and continued function. All subjects performed physical exercises to the point of exhaustion, then were immediately given cognitive tasks. The humans, despite their physical exhaustion, maintained nearly normal cognitive function. Nicole even joked with the testers as she completed complex puzzles, her hands shaking from muscle fatigue. This is most unusual, stated the council chairperson, a crystalline being who had been silent until now. In most species, physical exhaustion severely impairs mental function. Talia stepped forward. We've documented how human hormonal responses differ from all known species. During stress, certain hormones actually improve cognitive function. It's called adrenaline clarity, Dr. Wright added. In emergency situations, humans often report heightened awareness and improved decision-making. The final test examined sleep deprivation. After 24 hours without rest, all subjects were tested hourly on reaction time and problem solving. The comparison aliens showed rapid deterioration. One eventually entered a forced hibernation state. The humans, while definitely impaired, continued functioning at basic levels. Humans regularly work night shifts in hospitals and emergency services, HFY explained. They can adapt to altered sleep cycles and function despite fatigue. As the tests concluded, the council gathered to discuss the results. The students and their human volunteers waited anxiously. Finally, the chairperson approached them. "We have reviewed your research and today's demonstrations. The evidence is compelling." Professor Xanthi stood taller. "And your conclusion?" "Humans do indeed possess remarkable resilience through mechanisms we have not observed in other species," the chairperson stated. "This combination of cellular adaptation, pain management, mental override of physical limitations, and functionality under stress represents a unique evolutionary path." The students looked at each other with excitement. Their research was being validated. "The Council formally recognizes humans as an anomalous resilient species," the chairperson continued, "and we believe your findings could lead to significant advances in trauma treatment across the galaxy." 3 months after the demonstration, the alien medical students gathered in the Grand Hall of the Galactic Medical Academy. The room was filled with beings from across the galaxy, all here to witness the presentation of their groundbreaking research. Professor Xanthi stood proudly beside her students as the Academy Director introduced them. "Today we honor these students for their discovery of unique resilience mechanisms in humans," the Director announced. "Their work has already led to new approaches in trauma treatment." HFY stepped forward to explain how they had adapted human pain management techniques for other species. "By understanding how humans mentally process pain, we've developed treatments that reduce suffering without compromising awareness." Krell presented his work on the stress proteins he had discovered. "We've successfully synthesized versions of these proteins that can be administered to patients with severe injuries. Early trials show a 40% improvement in recovery rates." Nebulon described new psychological approaches based on human resilience. "Many species now benefit from techniques humans call mindfulness and meditation to manage physical distress." Talia showed videos of doctors across the galaxy implementing their findings. On 17 planets, emergency medicine protocols have been revised based on our research. After the presentation, the students were surrounded by medical professionals eager to learn more. Dr. Wright watched from the side of the room, smiling at the excitement their work had generated. Professor Xanthi joined her. "None of this would have been possible without your help, Dr. Wright. I just showed you what humans have always known about ourselves," she replied. "It's your students who recognized its importance." Later that day, the Academy officially announced the creation of a human medical exchange program. Doctors from Earth would travel to other planets to share knowledge of emergency medicine and rehabilitation, while alien medical experts would bring advanced technologies to human hospitals. In the research center where it all began, the 4 students packed their belongings. Their project was complete, and they would soon graduate and begin their medical careers. "I've decided to specialize in psychological endurance," Nebulon announced. "The human capacity to overcome mental barriers fascinates me." "I'll focus on physical recovery techniques," Krell said, his skin glowing the satisfied blue. "There's still so much to learn about how humans rebuild after injury." "Stress response is my area," HFY added. "Those proteins are just the beginning of what we might discover." "And I want to study pain management," Talia said, her body pulsing with soft light. "The way humans process and control pain could help countless beings." Dr. Wright arrived with 3 visitors. Joe Gardner, now walking with only a slight limp, Nurse Samantha Perez, and Beth Collins, the marathon runner. "We wanted to say goodbye," Joe said, shaking hands with each alien student. "And thank you for seeing something special in us." "It wasn't just special," HFY replied. It was extraordinary. You've changed how the galaxy understands biology. As they shared a final meal together, Professor Xanthi raised a glass. To the completion of a successful project, and to new beginnings. And to humans, Krell added. The species that taught us limitations are often just challenges waiting to be overcome. After their human friends left, the students finished packing. Their project would be published in the prestigious Galactic Medical Journal, with their names as primary researchers. It was an honor rarely given to students. What do you think is the most important thing we learned? Talia asked her friends. That resilience takes many forms, Nebulon replied. What looks like weakness can hide remarkable strength. That biology isn't destiny, Krell added. Evolution finds unexpected paths to survival. That sometimes, Sixfora said thoughtfully, the most vulnerable species develop the greatest endurance. As they left the research center for the last time, they passed Dr. Wright speaking with a group of new alien visitors. They heard her final words to the group. The human body might break, but the human spirit bends. It's not about how hard you can hit, but how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done. The students realized this simple wisdom captured everything they had discovered. Sometimes the greatest strength lies not in avoiding damage, but in the extraordinary ability to endure it.